to this computer. It'll let you know that it is recording, so it'll ask you if that's okay. So everyone just, press all good. But thanks for joining us this evening. We're here with our coach, Helene. Helene, thank you for joining us, and thank you for being in our ADSM group all month. She's gonna be hanging around as well to like help us out and give us advice. But the aim of tonight's Q&A was to really hone in on a lot of the questions that have been coming through, and hey Karen, to hone in on those questions and really deep dive into those and answer them in length and ask any additional questions that you may feel would be easier to ask here. It is being recorded and we will share it on ADSN, and Helene will share it as well. So thanks everyone. Well, yes, we'll get started. Helene, take it away.
Thank you everyone for being here. Yes, so it was really good for me to be there for the last month and really understand the specificity of your group. So yes, I hope you read some of the posts that were in, so I give you a little idea of what I'm going to talk about tonight. There was a few questions, but do you want me to begin to talk about what burnout is?
Yeah, I think so. And we were also talking about today, which I thought was really interesting. So Helene and I caught up a little bit earlier in the day to chat about a few things, and what was really interesting in our conversation was her observation of Australian culture and burnout as opposed to European culture and burnout, because I'm sure you can hear that Helene is French. So she's got she's got such a great diverse understanding of how culture can actually influence the way that we burn out or we approach things like work, life, all those sort of things. Is that right, Helene? Is that what you were?
Yeah, Janet said this afternoon, in France you have a better work-life balance. And it's quite interesting because yes, we do. So in France we only work 35 hours per week, but the way we define work or the way we see work is absolutely in an unhappy place. So, and I was saying, I don't know if you see the series Emily in Paris.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
Yes.
And there is a moment where Emily is saying that she loves to go to work. And the French person said to him with a French accent that I'm always loving to try to do. Like if I don't already have it, I would do it. You don't know what happiness is.
Yeah.
And that's really the idea that French people think work is not a happy place. But I shouldn't generalize too much, but that's the idea. And my husband is a Kiwi and we lived in France for 9 months. He couldn't stand more than 3 months work there because the work culture is very different. So that was the interesting part between France and Australia. In Australia, you are allowed to love to go to work and get your identity at work. But in France, it's a little more, not as well seen, I would say.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And then obviously that impacts the way that we function, I guess, and the way that we approach burnout. So would you say that there's a big difference between, that culture and in burnout? Does burnout even exist in France, if that's the case?
Yes. So sorry, I will say two things. So one thing is what I found in your group that was really cool is I feel like you are all knowing you are sacrificing a lot for your husband and or your wife. But I feel like I often heard your member of your group saying that there was a reason behind and that you understood why you were doing it. So that was a big part for me. If you have a reason, it's much easier to sacrifice that if you don't, for burnout at least. If you don't have a reason and you're just going crazy, you can get in burnout much quicker. The interesting part about burnout, and mostly the latest study were into parental burnout. They had an international research where they went a little everywhere in the world to figure out if parental burnout was existing everywhere. And the same it could be quite similar with job burnout. But what they found out is there was a lot of differences between the countries, like a lot. But the one that was the only one explaining why there was so many differences was if a country had individualistic values. Does that make sense? Individualistic values, yeah.
Yeah, but could you expand a little bit on that? Like, what would an example be?
So you are in charge of your own life. It's
it.
much more about goal. It's much more about success. The opposite of it takes a village to raise a child, or you work in a team, and that kind of ideas. So what they found out is for parental burnout, there was a huge parental burnout in France, Belgium, America, and also Australia, but mostly the first third countries were with the most parental burnout. But there was almost no parental burnout in country in the continent of Africa, because they use a lot the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. So same idea with job burnout. If you don't have a team around you, which is a massive resource, you can be more in job burnout than if you are alone.
Right. Okay, that's really interesting. So, and that, I guess that's a good segue. So you specialize in parental burnout or in burnout, like as a whole? Is that right?
Yeah, I'm a family coach mostly. So I also do like adult coaching, but definitely my passion is with families. But yes, I help also with job burnout. But yeah, this year was really a lot about parental burnout.
Yeah, wow. Could you explain parental burnout like for us?
Yeah, I can explain both of them. And please let me know if you don't understand my accent, or if I speak too fast, you can go.
All good, no worries. All good.
But yes, burnout is it's like a feeling of extreme and severe exhaustion in a specific role. So that's quite different to depression, or also postnatal depression, or all the other mental health issues. It's to a whole. You could be in job burnout and in parental burnout, but it will be specific to a whole, which will mean that actually, if you are in job burnout, when you go back home, it's your little heaven. And if you are in parental burnout, your job could be a little where you feel safe. So people take time to go back from home to work if they are in job burnout, and the opposite is true. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think I've witnessed that as well.
Yes. So burnout is a stress-related syndrome. So it's about stress. And it's when you have too much stress for too long without the resources to cope with the stress. So don't get me wrong, job and parenting is full of stress. Like there is no way that you are parenting or being at work without any stress. But the difference is when you have stress for a way too long period and no resources with it. And you can have only one massive stressor that makes you in burnout. One big one is bullying, for example, in workplace. That could bring you into burnout. So one stressor can be enough. So it's not about the number of stressor, it's about the strength or the weight of the stressor. So we often take the idea of a balance and how much stressor do you have compared to the resources. There are really great tests that are put on the website, on your Facebook page. So 2 tests that you can do to know if you are in job burnout or in parental burnout. I often recommend to actually come to me or to a psychologist that you know to do the test, because when you do it, then you finish it and you are by yourself with the results, and it can be quite harsh. But if you feel strong enough, or if you don't feel comfortable to see a psychologist about that, you can do it by yourself. So there is for job burnout and parental burnout, there are tests on your Facebook page.
Yeah, I think we can share those again as well. They may have gotten lost in the thread, so we can always bump them up. But I did the test solo, and I didn't check in with anybody.
How did you find
like
this?
74%. It's like, I'm not surprised, not surprised.
Yeah.
Danny's asked a really good question. So what if you have work and parental burnout? So if you've got both, where do you feel safe then?
That's where it's quite scary, because you don't have a safe place anymore. And that's where thoughts like suicidal thoughts and escape thoughts can arrive. And they are more present in parental burnout for full-time mothers also. So yeah, if you have job burnout and parental burnout, or if you are a full-time mothers, these two types of thoughts can come more often, because you are with the source of your stress non-stop, without even a rest or a break from it. So the only way to try to think about a solution is actually suicidal thought or escape thought. And it's a normal mechanisms. And when you think it's your brain doing it, you need to reach out for help, just to help yourself to get out of all of that. Yes.
So help would, because obviously we don't want to go down that path, but we can understand how if you have both, that could really cause major stress. So you would then suggest highly that they seek assistance, psychology, or like a coach through yourself. But then it would be, I guess, really, what would be some of the strategies that you would share with someone in that position? Like, would it be removing one of the stresses or taking time off, or?
Yeah, so you did really well by saying removing one of the stressors. So the idea is it's a balance. So you have stressor and resources. So one of the first things we do actually when you come to see me as a coach for burnout is we actually take a full session to look at your balance. What is in your balance that makes you become in parental burnout or in job burnout? The great thing about these two mental health issues is actually a lot of it is due to your personality, your history, or your way to see life, and which is great, because if it was more external, you would need a therapy when you have to have a change of your house or change of your life. But the great thing about that is actually, no, we can work on you and it will have effect quite quickly. So that's a great news. And so when we work on the balance on the first session, we look which stressor and which resources you have, and then we can categorize them into different categories, saying this one, for example, I can change it, or I can. So you can eliminate it, you can reduce it, and you can add resources or make them bigger, like more accessible. So that's one of the things we look at, and also we look at the cost ratio. So is it really difficult to change it? So for example, someone who, in lockdown, that was the best example actually, or for some of you moving all the time and not having a community around you, this is something we will take a lot of time to change and probably a lot of energy. So probably that wouldn't be the first one to look at to change. Maybe we will look more to change your personality or over part of your history.
I was going to say that because it was interesting what you said about external, because I guess for a lot of us in this community, our external situations are very much out of control for us, and we don't have any control over it, particularly the moves and where we end up and things like that. And they're external situations that cause the stresses that we can't control. But what's really interesting is what you're saying is working on yourself internally, but also working on yourself personally is what you're able to use as a tool to push yourself through and out of burnout. Is that, am I getting that right?
Yeah, you're translating really well.
Okay, great. Okay, awesome.
But again, like if you feel like it wouldn't be a massive cost ratio, like cost to change your external factors, we will look into it. But yeah, it depends on each situation. And that's really important. Like what I love about your group is how many people are actually giving ideas, because one idea, if only one person give an idea, it wouldn't help the person. So burnout is very personal. So you need a lot of idea and a lot of tools to get out of it. So I really like that your group is that involved. And if one person answer, they still answer under it. or comment under the first person. And I think that's really important to keep on doing that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree. It's definitely nice that there are a lot of different options. And I think so many of us have had such diverse experiences that you can give the advice. But I know from my own personal experience, and I'm not going to make this about me, but just as an example of what you were saying, is that external stresses, I have experienced that, and that has caused burnout. But I was taught and told to change my perspective, and that was how I was able to take myself out of it. So I agree that it can be a really good tool.
Yes. Yeah. Can I ask, most of you, are you here more interested about job burnout or parental burnout, or both?
Just comment in the chat box. Just give us an idea of what you're more interested in.
So just that I know.
So that we can, maybe even sway it that way.
Thank you. Whoa, you write fast.
Yeah. Oh, we have a great question.
Yeah, I can see. Do you want to say it?
Yeah, it's all parental. Yeah, I'll read out this. Hi, Sophie. Thanks for joining us. In your work with burnout, do you feel one is more accepted, job versus parental? I was previously a social worker and we spoke a lot about burnout, but I feel like it's not discussed with parental burnout.
Thank you so much. Love that question. So it's quite interesting. So job burnout was studied in the 1970s, and parental burnout was talked about a few times in scientific literature, but only studied intensively in 2017. So it's a massive gap between the two. So that's what makes a difference. So, and also it takes 10 years normally for a study to be done and to be talked to the people who need it. So the people who are doing the study about parental burnout are Isabelle Roskam and Maura Mikola-Jack. They are from Belgium, and they are working crazy to be able to not wait these 10 years. The issue is they speak French, and so the training and everything is mostly in French. It's becoming more and more accessible to English, so the training that I did was translated this year. But in Australia, I'm still the only trained person, and I'm probably the only person that has read the books and I talk to them all the time, and they keep on telling me no one else from Australia is that intensively studying except myself. That's why also I really try to bring awareness, and I do a lot of podcasts and hope that more professional will do it. So please talk about it around you. Yes, so that's the biggest thing. So of course, job burnout will be much more socially acceptable, just because we have talked much more about it, but also because when you begin to work, it's quite acceptable that there will be hard moments. So when you have accepted for a new job, everybody will tell you, some people, so for example, saying a nurse or a social worker, some people will say, great for you, I know you love that, but there will be some hard times. Everybody will acknowledge both sides. When you are a parent, when you receive the cards, when your baby is born, no one is telling you good luck with the nappies. They all tell you, this is such a great thing, congratulations. So you see the difference, like parenting comes with this almost feeling that this will be great. But also parental burnout has been much more prevalent now because of contraception and IVF and all this new stuff that makes us be able to choose to become a parent. So because we choose to be a parent, we feel like we are not as much allowed to complain about it or to ask for help as we were 100 years ago. So there's a lot of reason why parental burnout is more prevalent now, but that's a reason also why parental burnout is not as socially acceptable.
That's really interesting, because it's so true. There is this perception that you have a baby and it's a joy, and so if you whinge about it or there's an issue, it's like you're ungrateful for, even I don't have a child, so it's hard for me to say, but I can imagine I have friends that have like, oh, I've wanted a kid my whole life, and then they've had the child and they're like, I don't know what to do with it, and I'm so stressed and so alone, and I feel so ungrateful. And I don't think that, yeah, it's sad that it's not, that those things aren't spoken about and also celebrated, because it's true, like hardship is everything. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really great that you're raising this awareness and, yeah, helping our community for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sophie said, yes, a friend who has had IVF really struggles to say anything she finds challenging. She always says, but of course I love him. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, so that's a guilt about being a parent. You always have to remind people that yes, you're still a good parent. And this guilt is also a new thing. And it comes from the fact that in the last 100 years, a lot happened for the rights of the children, which, don't get me wrong, it's a great thing. But more and more children have rights. So, and more also psychologists have raised awareness on the development capacities of children. So before we would think a child could be just left on the side of the on the side in the home, and that would be fine. But now we understand we actually need to help them to develop their emotional capacities, their cognitive capacities. So we feel this obligation to always do more for them. So this, yeah, it comes from all of that, this guilt of saying that we are trying our best with our children all the time.
Can we talk more about that guilt? I'm really interested. Does that guilt and not communicating that guilt, can those emotions create burnout and parental burnout? Can they be a factor?
So one of the factors of parental burnout is low emotional competencies. So emotional competencies is the capacity to identify your emotion, understand it. Sorry, I will go a little slower. So identify your emotions. So if you are capable of knowing, of realizing how you are feeling, you will be able to control and lower down emotions. So for example, if you are very stressed, your stress will go up. And if you realize you are stressed, and just at the end, when you're actually very stressed, it will be very hard to go back to a normal level. But if you identify that you are beginning to be stressed at the beginning, the energy that it will bring you to go down and to have a normal level of stress will be much smaller. So that's really good to begin to identify your emotions quite quickly and try to work on it. So the second thing about emotional competency is understanding your emotions. So I often talk about the iceberg picture. I will try to share it with you. Sorry, give me 1 second. That will talk to you a little more. Can you see it?
Yes.
Cool. Can you see my mouse cursor? Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. So talking about the emotional stress, because this is what burnout is about. So if you understand your why you are getting upset, or why you are getting stressed, or why you are getting sad, there is a situation. So for example, taking the example of a parent, and she had a week where her mom was sick at the hospital. No one could help her. She has a very strong relationship with her mom, but none of us, the brother, could help her. And on the Friday night, she comes home and she has to do dinner and everything else. And then the child keeps ask her one thing: "Mommy, can you come and play with me?" Second time, and third time she screams. She screams at the child and she loses it. And if she doesn't understand well enough emotions, she will think that the situation made her upset, when actually she could realize, if she has strong enough emotional competencies, that this is actually the rest that was accumulated for a while. So the tension accumulating during the previous hours, days, or week, and the personality and history. So this is a big one to remember. Like when you feel stress or anything, if you see that a small situation, you think you can control it, maybe not if you have had a lot of things before. So it's good actually to say to your families and partners, oh wait, I had actually a very big week and a small situation could make me scream or lose it. So that's the same idea that you can identify quicker what's happening. So that was the second thing. So I could talk about emotional competency for a long time, so I'll try to, but it's a very big one on parental burnout and job burnout. So, okay. And then you can also utilize your emotions, so change your attitude depending on what triggers you. So, for example, if you know that you are going to be difficult for a woman before you have your period, so change things around you to be easier at that time. Or for example, if you know that your child is always very upset after daycare, try to change what you are doing after daycare so he can have a relaxing time or food or whatever he needs. Another one really important in developing emotional competencies is expressing your emotions. And that's a big one too. If I can share the screen. Are you all enjoying that? Yes?
Yeah. It's definitely helpful. I've got a question.
Sorry, another one, but this one is probably.
If anyone has questions, please pop them in the chat.
This one is probably really good for your group because your spouse is probably poor in time. So, where is it? So I'm trying to share it. No way. So yeah, if your husband is poor in time and you don't know how to really express your emotions or feelings, this is a great little flyer or whatever you want to call it to have in front of you to make sure that you are putting your message well across instead of losing your message. So for example, if I take a few of them, so when we want to express our emotions or our feelings, we often say the other person. So you are making me feel upset. You are blah, blah, blah. Instead of talking about ourselves, I feel stressed when it's bath time or when I'm going to work, or much more about yourself and not. I hear someone saying one day, yeah, so I feel stressed when you scream at me. No, that's not what, that's not exactly what I meant, but getting there. We talk in terms of personalities, like you are messy or you just don't care, instead of talking about behaviors, like you do this, like you do leave your clothes on the floor. And I feel stressed when you left your, like it's much more about the moment instead of being messy. If that makes sense. We generalize, like you always leave your clothes on the floor, instead of saying yesterday you left your clothes on the floor. Yeah. So yeah, so I can give you this, but it's a really good one to be able to get your message across a little faster and a little more effectively with your spouse, if that makes sense.
We can share this. We can share this to the group, Sophie. Yeah, for sure. We do have all-time poor part. We do, yes. And I'm guilty of doing. You did this, and you did that. So yeah.
Oh, don't worry. I still do it. I know it, and I teach it, and I still do it. And my husband has done my course as a guinea pig, and he's like, "Do you remember in your course when you said?"
Do you get annoyed when that gets thrown at you, Helene?
Yes, I do. And the last thing about the emotional competencies is controlling your emotions. So of course you can do it the entire way, and it's controlling them in a constructive way instead of a destructive way. So a constructive way would be whatever works for you, and it's different for everybody, but it could be meditation, yoga, going for a walk. And a destructive way would be alcohol. And that's a big one in Australia. And I did a talk for girls who are doing course for people who use alcohol for regulation of emotions. So yeah, so it's a big one too, like using alcohol for regulation of emotions. And I think in Australia, you say a lot like, or come and have a wine. And it's, don't get me wrong, like it's come with the best intention, but sometimes it can be quite destructive. Yeah.
What would be your top 3 things that you would suggest to parents with parental burnout for helping them regulate their emotions? So I heard you mention one, which was mindfulness stuff, so meditation, yoga, going for a walk.
Interestingly, no, actually, I wouldn't say so. It's quite one of the big thing about parental burnout is we are trying to go away of saying there is one way to get out of it. And the reason is because your balance is very different. And some people will love cooking and it will make them very relaxing. And I don't want to say you should all cook, because if you tell me to cook, I'm going to lose it. But I'm not going to cook. It's going to make me very stressed. So actually, what we do is to actually really ask people what is an activity that helps you to be less stressed. And you have to find it. And that's where, again, your group is really great. And the group, we do therapy in groups or individual, but groups therapy are really good at giving people ideas and help them to find their own way and their own story. So I would actually say what makes you feel better. But saying that, there is a few things that I can give as an example of the main factors who are bringing people in burnout and what you can do against it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So the first one is trying to have a greater support from families and communities. So that's a big one. And when you do the burnout coaching, there is a session on that specifically. Because as I said, like Australia is a very individualistic country. So 2 things, people don't have a very big team around them. It's not a village at all. It's often you and your husband, or you and your wife.
Or you solo.
Or you alone. So it's very, very, very small. So this is not sustainable, and this is not how parenting was supposed to be, almost. Even for a child perspective, being only with 2 people who are teaching them stuff is way too small. I'm a nanny on the side of family coaching, or I'm a family coach on the side of nannying. I love both of them, but it's really interesting to hear people feeling guilty. So I had also a family daycare for a while and working in a daycare. Parents feel guilty to bring their children to the daycare or to the nanny. And I'm like, your child needs more than just your own values. Like, you will be like in a world with so many other values. So let him see it, let him build his own values towards other people. So that's a good one to think about when you feel guilty about leaving your child at daycare. And another thing that it's asking for help. So it has been found that people who are in burnout often don't know how to ask for help, or they don't ask effectively. So that's where one part also of the course is about how to ask for help and what makes you not feeling comfortable to ask for help. And some people who are in parental burnout or in job burnout often want to control a lot, or they want to have the thing done their own way, or they think that it's a failure if they ask for someone to help. So all these little, so some are due to like the environment, and some are due to your personality, some are due to your culture. So it's really good actually to go a little deeper and realize why are you not capable of asking for help. And there is paid help or like normal, like help from your family, but there is also, it's really cool actually when you do the classes, it gets very creative. So one of the person doing the class was a dad, and he really wanted a weekend away with his wife. And so he was like, I don't know how to do it. And so they created a Facebook group where everybody who will enter the Facebook group will have to give away one weekend where they would have a child or the children of another family in the Facebook group. And that said, he gained 2 great weekends a year. One where the child was away because he will have a weekend with his wife, and one when we get the children or the child from the other family because they will do stuff that we would never do before. So anyway, it's just being very creative. So I think in your group, that's something that would be more appropriate to say, because I hear that a lot of you move a lot and don't have a lot of support. So yeah, so definitely being creative. Another idea that was given that I really liked is actually just putting flyers around your houses to see if there is a retired person who would like to help with washing or cooking or caring about the children. So yeah, just being creative helps. And the flyer was done by the child, saying my mom is a little exhausted and would you mind to help me a few hours? And it worked. So that was the first thing. The second thing is that I think everybody will also benefit from it, is to know that being a good enough parent or a good enough worker is enough. For parents, I will talk a little more because that's my domain. So for parents, we always feel like the pressure to be perfect. And someone on your Facebook group, I think, said, oh, I was actually thinking my mom was always perfect. And I realized only now that she was not. So we are pushed to this idea to think that our parents are perfect, and we want to keep on doing, like, almost being perfect for our children, but that's not going to happen. So it's better to not try. And also, since the 1970s, studies have shown repeatedly that being a parent good enough is better for a child, because he will learn from making mistakes and how to deal with that. So that's much more important to a child than thinking that you are perfect. So be actually happy when you make a mistake and show to your children how to deal with your imperfection. So that was the second one. And the third one is actually, we talked about it a little, but removing the guilt associated with self-care. So this one is more, we didn't talk too much about guilt, but this one is much more about going to self-care. So I like to take the idea of airplane, and if I'm good enough, I'm going to share a picture at the same time. When you go in an airplane, people say to you, put your mask, the oxygen mask, before your children one. Mm-hmm. And so that's this idea of putting your children mask, your mask before your children one. That's a very small picture. Anyway, yes, that's the idea. Like, think about yourself first. Even more, I keep on saying even more for your group, but I think your group is very, very prevalent to parental burnout. Mm-hmm.
Correct. Yeah.
Sorry, on that topic, it's mostly because a lot of risk factors, you will find it in your group. I won't go too deep in it because I don't want to generalize, but if you want to know more about it, just ask me. But yes, so the idea is to really go back to self-care to yourself, because in your group, you are the strong, the spouse is a strong person in the family, and so the family needs you. So think about you first, because if you are not okay, your family won't be okay. I say that just because it's a good reason, it's a good excuse for you to do it, but you should just care about you because you're important. And you are special. Yeah. Oh, another one that I can give also, it's about quality time, and that would be also just about the children. So this one is about parental burnout again, because in our society we are beginning to think that we should be doing a lot of educational things with our children, and it should all be about the children. But actually, as a nanny, I love to say, what do you want to do today? And then the child will have to say to me, and what do you want to do today? And we have to both fill our cup. And if we can do it at the same time, it's great. So if we can do an activity that we both like, great. But if there is, if it's not working that day, we both have to have something that we have liked during that day. Even as a nanny, I do this. Wow. Because I think it's important for me and for the children to have an understanding of filling our cups.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Does make sense. Yes. Thank you. We've got a question that I want us to chat about from Sophie before we go into some of the questions from the group. I'm just conscious of time, so I want us to make sure we get to those. Sophie said this is probably very individual, but tips on shifting the internal stuff. So I'm assuming, Sophie, you mean like the like shifting perspective, the internal, is it maybe the guilt, or do you want to let us know what internal stuff? The mindset. Yeah, great. So shifting the mindset, tips on that.
I'm not sure to understand exactly the question. So how to change your way to see?
So how to shift, like, so say you're in a mindset of burnout, or you're in your burnout, how, and we were talking about the external factors and how we can't control them, but we can control ourselves. So what would your tips be on shifting the internal stuff to help us with our burnout, as opposed,
as opposed to external? Yes. Yeah. So I'm sorry, Sophie, I would have to know a little more about what it is exactly, but it would be one of the parts that we will have done on the first session, and knowing really what is internally making you in burnout. So without knowing really what's happening in the person, it's hard for me to answer the question, but mostly is trying to change your way to see burnout, your way to see what you have to do. So it would be really hard, but if I can give an example, for example, some people cannot leave the laundry and like they have to have the laundry done every week, and it's very stressful for them. Whatever it is, that it is every week, every day, if it's stressing you, we will have to change that. But it's also like there is a part of it, which is a part of the course, which is about being a perfectionist. So that's something that we work on, which I think also, again, we talk a lot to your group, because I think a lot of people in your group will be in that situation. So yes, so that's a massive factor of burnout, job burnout and parental burnout, massive factor to try to be always perfectionist.
How would you shift perfectionist? Like, if you've got that perfectionist mindset, like I know that someone has told me, and a psychologist has told me once, 80% is good enough. Like, I'd always be like, oh, but it has to be 100%. She's like, but how do you know it's 100%? She's like, 80% is good enough. And so I kind of adopted this philosophy of like, it's 80%, whatever, like, it's done.
That's right. I really like this idea.
Yeah.
So I have a few images that I try to give to people. So one is to think about perfectionism. So because it's really good to be a perfectionist, I personally think it's a great quality, and I don't think you should try to get rid of it. I think you should just change the way you see it, so your mindset. But instead of trying to reach it, which is going to cost you a lot of energy and if you don't have strong emotional competencies, it will make you feeling of failure. It's really good. There's a lot of guilt associated to it. So instead of trying to reach it, try to see it as a lighthouse way above a cliff, and you are in a boat. And you try to reach it, but you just see it. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, and you're trying to get close to it. But don't try to go to the 100%, because if you go to the 100%, what you're only going to do is to go through the cliff and have an accident. So it will cost you way too much to try to go to the lighthouse. So that's the idea I give to people. That is a good one. But the idea also, I don't have the picture, but there's a great graph that I use in the course, which is when you are a perfectionist, you have very high standards. And so there is two things. So you can succeed or you can fail. If you succeed, what a perfectionist does is not to congratulate itself and say, well done, is to go, I can do it. Tomorrow I can do more. And that's a big thing. So instead of just sitting there and being proud of itself, a perfectionist will often, not always, don't get me wrong, but will often more try to have higher standard again. So it goes high standards, success, getting more high standards, sometimes just feeling good, but it depends on your personality. But a lot of perfectionists will go try to create higher standards. So it's this really difficult cycle. And at one point you will just crash. So that's the first part of being a perfectionist. The other part is failure. And when you get into failure, as I said, it's quite difficult emotions after, and guilt. And when you have guilt or difficult emotions and you don't know how to control it, it's actually another vicious circle. I know I don't say well vicious. Vicious.
Vicious, yes, you got it right.
I try to work on it today, but it never works.
You did well. Vicious.
Oh, it's so funny. I said to my husband today, vicious? He said, no, vicious. Still did it. Anyway, I'm almost there.
You did well, it's fine.
At least it's funny.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, so definitely I'm not a perfectionist.
You have to laugh at yourself. It's important.
Oh, it's how you get stronger emotional competencies. So if you have this guilt, so if I would have felt really guilty, I would have probably just be like sweating, and then my emotional competencies would have just go lower. So it's really good actually to be able to find. So there's two ways you can change your emotions, which is quite hard because your brain has been wired for so many years to go failure, guilt, or failure, whatever emotions you feel. It's much easier to let the brain go there, but instead of staying in the guilt for too long, try to reduce the amount of time you are in the guilt. And so you say to yourself, to reduce it, you say to yourself, okay, I won't stay too long in the guilty feelings because I want to strengthen my emotional competencies. So that's a way to do it. I hope you answer your questions, Sophie.
Yeah. I think, Sophie, did you feel like she answered your question? Yeah, I feel like you did well.
I could show you need.
Yeah. Awesome.
She can understand, yes.
We all understood. Vicious. We got there. Love it. Let's head into, if there's no, has anyone got any other questions? We can take one more before we go into the couple of, because we've actually knocked off a few that we had in our list in our conversation.
And check also if I was seeing.
I think we're good. All right, let's pop into these questions. So, Helene, we've covered self-care. One of the questions was,
I had one about can you explain what a burnout coach does? But I think I did a lot. But what I wanted to say is actually I saw that in your group there is a lot of demands for coaching, but it's always it's always really hard to actually go and book a session, because when you have the energy to book for a session, you are better. So you're like, oh, I don't need to book anymore because I actually feel better today. But so to help you with the last push, I offer Janet to give you a 20% discount until the end of the month if you want to join any sessions that I do. And I do 3 different types of sessions. I do individual sessions. So we could talk about anything you wanted for an hour, and it would be 20% of $80. Or we could do the parental burnout course completely. And it could be in an individual session or in a group session. And I would love to see if we could have like minimum 6 people joining from your group. That would be great. But if not, we can do individual.
We can post. That's very generous of you, and we can post that on the group.
Yeah, the group sessions are really cheap. It's $350 for 8 sessions of 2 hours.
Wow.
It's quite good for your group, so maybe we should
we definitely will promote that. I think that's really important. Thank you, Helene. That's very generous of you for us. So we'll head to the question because it's a big one. For those of us who have been dealing with Melbourne lockdown and family stuff overseas, any tips on creating community?
Yes, so I think I touched a little about it already, but again, being very creative. So, but again, it's a cost ratio story. So if it's too hard, don't even bother. Try to look for other stuff. How can you yourself lower your own expectations? And that's something very important during COVID. a lot of people have tried to have the same expectation about their parenting style or their job style as before COVID. You can't. It's COVID. You just can't. So lower your expectation, lower it again and again and again until you feel not burnout anymore. So that would be the actually a tip that I would more recommend if she feels like the energy to try to find a community is harder. But yeah, then I will go back to what I said about being creative in your way you ask for community.
Yeah. Okay, cool. This question, I'm not a parent yet, but I'm reading these posts and wondering how to stop burnout. It sounds like it gets to even the most organized of people. I can hear the difficulties of the people in your group, and I want to ask a professional for your advice.
Yeah, so the best thing is actually like identifying your emotion. It's much better to prevent parental burnout than to treat it. So that's where I like to do my awareness talks, because I hope that I can prevent it. So as a future parents, I would say to just learn about what are the risk factors. Are you more at risk than other people? What is in your personality that could bring you to burnout? And try to know that before. So I know that personally, I will probably be in parental burnout. So working towards this now before having children, it's much easier. Yes, so that would be the first thing. And I try to read the question again.
It was about, so they don't have kids yet, but how
to the most organized people. Sorry.
Yeah, but it seems to be, it gets to everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it gets to everybody, and because fortunately there are some people who have major resources, but if a person were organized, it's actually making them stress, and they have to constantly be organized, they will be in burnout. So again, it's depending on the feeling that you have. So you can be organized, but if it is because this makes you less stressed, it's great. But if you need to be organized, otherwise you're stressed, it will bring burnout. So that's very interesting to think that nothing is black and white.
Yeah, that's true. It's really true. I feel like we've already answered partially this question, but I'm going to read it out anyway. I'm a medical spouse living interstate, away from support structures with my partner, who is on a training program and working ridiculous hours. We have 2 young kids. I feel extremely burnt out from what you have described, but being interstate without support and not working myself, we can't afford outside help. How do I lessen my burnout but still manage to keep everything going? So I guess, Helene, this would be a very good example of changing your internal dialogue.
Yes, it would be. But I would say, I'm sorry, but if you are extremely burnt out and if you say it, you don't even need to do the test. If you say it, a test doesn't help. Like you said it yourself, Janet, you knew before doing it.
Yes.
The test is only going to show, to assess your feelings. So if you feel burnout, I would say your cortisol levels are too high for you to actually work by yourself, get out of burnout by yourself. And I know you say you don't have a lot of money to get help, but actually the first help you have to do when you're extremely burnt out is to get professional help.
Mm-hmm.
When you're at this level, your brain is functioning in a way that it's in survival mode, and it's really hard to back off it and really realize, okay, what can I do? Often when you're at that level, there is like you actually, doctor will say, I give you 2 months of not working anymore or not being a mother anymore, which you cannot really do. But I give you 2 months where you really have to stop and think about yourself. And the mother, the dad, the worker, whoever it is, can't do it. And I saw it in your post. People are like, it's 9 o'clock and I'm still doing my grocery shopping, because your brain is just firing constantly and you cannot stop. So you really need to seek help.
I have a question, Helene, I'm curious about. I don't know if it relates to parental burnout, but it's more about just burnout in general. Have you, in your experience, seen people with burnout being diagnosed as depression? Because they can be similar. I'm assuming there can be similarities. And then as a consequence, being put on medication. Because it's interesting that you said the doctor will just say, well, you can't work for 2 months, or here, take something to help it, which is a Band-Aid for us. If you're going to a doctor for burnout, I'm just curious about what your experience is with that, and if there are, if you've seen it happen.
Yes, and even more that most of Australian doctors or psychologists don't even know it. Even more that burnout, even job burnout, who has been studied since 1917, is still not listed as a mental health issues for psychologists.
Wow.
So yes, but it's not hard to it's not hard to differentiate job burnout, parental burnout, depression, postnatal depression, adrenaline fatigue when you know them, just because burnout is specific to the whole. So it's very easy when you talk to someone and it tells you, oh, when I'm with my friends, I feel great, I feel energy again, I can laugh, then you're like, you're not in depression. Depression is not always down, don't get me wrong, you have up and down, but yeah, if it's specific to a whole, if the person keep on coming back to talk about one specific whole, it's probably burnout. So there is a test that I actually give to people if I'm unsure. So the first thing I do when people come to me is they often know I'm specialized in parental burnout. And then there is, in the questionnaire, there are some questions who can make you think, is it depression or not? And so if you question yourself, then you can have a talk. And if you're still questioning yourself, then you can have another test differentiating depression or job burnout or parental burnout. So yeah, it's quite easy for me because I know about it.
Yeah. So what I was going to say was, would a big differentiator between depression and burnout be, with burnout, you remove that stress. So say you remove the bully from the job, and then all of a sudden everything's much better again.
That's right. So burnout and bullying. So bullying being able to go in, you can be in burnout when you are bullied. When the doctor often said you want to have a few weeks of holidays or a few weeks of sickness, whatever you call it, your doctor. And that's the best thing to do. But as a parent, you just can't. And that's where there is much more suicidal thought and escape thought.
Right.
And when I talk about escape thought, there's a feeling of leaving the family. And I had a patient who told me, it's awful, but I'm jealous of my friend who are single mothers because they have a week off. So that's this kind of ideas.
Right. Okay, that's very interesting. Sophie's asked an interesting question as well. Can it be both depression and burnout?
No, I will say no. Actually, I said no maybe a little quicker, but I would say no, burnout is more about a whole, and depression is more about your life. However, again, like when you will talk to your psychologist, you will be able to know more, but normally, no.
Okay, that's interesting, because I would have thought that maybe burnout could, like if you're feeling so burnt out, it could lead to those depressive emotions like sadness, blah, blah, blah. But
that's very, yeah.
But then once you, I guess, remove the stressor and then they go away, then obviously, because if you're depressed, then the remover of the stressor generally doesn't remove the depression. Was that why you say no?
So when you get into burnout for too long, then you can go into other type of mental disorder or mental health issues. So you can go into depression or other stuff. So
or even anxiety. Can you explain?
Yeah, and anxiety will bring, like it will be a circle, yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Can anxious feelings as well cause burnout because of adrenaline?
Yeah, hormone
levels and things like that? Yeah.
Okay. Yes, But the most important is it's great to have a name on stuff, and mostly because the research helps you to know exactly how to work towards feeling better. So, for example, for parental burnout, the treatment that I'm giving has actually been scientifically proven to reduce burnout from like top level to normal level in 3 months. But if you have a psychologist with who you are working with already, that would be like just go with him, and you don't need a name to feel better. I have a lot of people who come to see me. We sometimes don't even bother with trying to name how they feel, because that's not what they are looking for. But some people, they really like, and I think your group will be more prone to that, to put a name. Then you will go into the issue that your spouse will tell you, oh, but this is not a real disorder, or so you can get into another issue there. So the most important is just to acknowledge if you're not feeling well, that's enough to go and see someone.
Yeah. Sophie's asked another interesting question. If you have a history of depression and anxiety, are you more susceptible to burnout?
Yes, if you have any history of depression or anxiety, you probably have lower emotional competencies, and you probably are more prone to burnout.
Okay, that's very interesting. So in order to help yourself, it would be working on your emotional competencies.
Yes, and a lot of other stuff, but yes.
That would be one of them. Okay,
yeah.
Cool. All right, this next question, which is we'll make it our last one before we ask if the group has any other last questions. So this one is, my partner and I have no kids, but I relocated while he does a rural term. Given lockdowns and not knowing anyone, all I do is work and work from home. I'm really lonely and I'm over it. What advice would you have to help me feel happier about our situation?
I think she should talk to Sophie. We was talking about, that's why the group is so good, because Sophie will probably have much more to say than I do. Because firstly, sorry, Sophie, if I put words in your mouth, but Sophie will probably relate to, I need to change the mindset too. So they will be probably talking together about how to change their mindset. And even if it's different reason why they have to change their way to see life, they could probably be much more beneficial to each other than I will. That's why I really appreciate groups. But it would be an idea of changing the mindset. Nice. And again, it's very hard when you are in a routine and you just keep going and you feel like you have to just, you cannot stop. You don't, a lot of people don't even know what to do. And it comes also with the social media. Social media is super mega powerful in both ways. Like your group is amazing. I have a group for parental burnout, and I think it's amazing.
Of course, I'm sure it is.
But so the social media also bring this idea that you always have to do stuff for you, but you don't really know what it is, and you see people being happy, but you don't know how they arrive to this happiness. Most of the time they just smile in front of the camera, and you get confused with what happiness is. So finding back what happiness is for you. And what I say to people is often, because again, the doctors say to stop work for 2 weeks or to care about yourself for 2 weeks. It's quite scary for people. And I think it can be good and it can be beneficial, because some people just are freaking out and they just do spring clean. So what is a good thing to do is actually to tell yourself, I don't even know what to do. So to give yourself 5 minutes a day. So you can go crazy all day long, but try to give you 5 minutes. And then the day after, 7 and 10 and 15. So try to slowly bring more time of self-care. And I'm serious, 5 minutes can be hard for some people who have been in burnout, because to burn out, you have to burn in. So you have to have been giving yourself 100% for years. So how can you stop that in one day? You can't. That's why I say you often need a professional to help you to slowly back off and slowly allow yourself to just be doing stuff for you. Not even just doing stuff for yourself to do stuff for yourself, but reconnecting with yourself.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow, so much to think about. It's great. It's really awesome. Anyone in the group this evening have any last questions for Helene? Feel free to ask anything.
I hope it was helpful.
Oh, it was so great. I thought it was really fantastic.
And I hope no one fall asleep because of my accent.
No, I love your accent. It's great.
In a podcast I did, someone commented, just be careful with the French accent because I fall asleep.
Oh my gosh, that is so rude.
No, that was actually very well said. That wasn't rude. And I really laughed. I was like,
oh, that's so great.
He was said in the way, like, it's so beautiful that it was so sweet.
Oh, it's like, yeah, you get taken away on this romantic adventure.
I was like, well, that was beneficial, I hope.
When Helene and I were chatting earlier, we were talking about Emily in Paris, and I said to Helene, because she used it as an example, which I thought was great, because there was a lot of commentary about how Emily in Paris wasn't accurate, but I love that Helene was like, it was so accurate for like displaying how the French people are.
So accurate. It's really,
yeah.
If you haven't seen it, it's really funny. A good way to have a little of self-care.
Yeah, oh, awesome. So everyone needs to watch Emily in Paris if they haven't. That's your homework. Karen said, thank you so much. I feel like I'm in Paris. That's amazing. So we said, thank you. I'm breastfeeding in the dark. Definitely still awake. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Helene. I'm just very conscious of your time as well, and we're very appreciative of all your advice. And there's been some really good takeaways this evening. We'll share that 20%. Money said, thank you so much. We'll share that 20% discount with the group, and I really hope that our group takes up that amazing offer. So
that would be great to manage to have 6 people.
So you were saying that you want 6 people together to work together?
6 people minimum for a group is a good dynamic. I did it with less, it's good too, but as I said, creativity comes with a lot of different ideas. So 6 people is good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Sounds great. Thanks again. And I'll share the recording online, and you'll be in the group a bit longer. Ginny and I have asked you to stay longer. So if you're happy to stay and also help out, we're very appreciative. So
thank you so much. I would love to try to say all your names, Zoe, but Corinne, Sophie, I will try, but I will say it with my French accent, and you will be like, did she forget me? But thank you so much. I saw all of you tonight, and
thank you so much for
that. You can message me.
Please feel free to reach out to either one of us, and we'll point you in the right direction. So thank you so much. Have a great night, guys. We'll see you again soon. Bye. I'll stop recording.